Okay. Last week we talked about the political philosophy from the West, and then we came to the last thing, so-called end of history. This is a political and philosophical concept that supposes that a particular political, economic, and social system is now to the perfection of human being, and there will be no more change in the way we govern ourselves. This includes ideas from Thomas More, Craig Wilhelm, and Karl Marx, and Francis Fukuyama. Okay, the Francis Fukuyama book is actually quite interesting. He just called it The End of History and the Last Man. The concept of end of history is different from the end of the world in various religions. We are not forecasting the destruction of Earth or life of Earth or the end of human race. It just meant that the way we govern ourselves will have no further change. Human lives continues indefinitely in the future without any further major changes in society or system of governance or economics. Fukuyama distinguishes between the material or the real world and the world of ideas and consciousness. He believes that in the realm of ideas, liberalism has proven to be triumphant. Meaning that even through a successful liberal democracy and market economy have not yet been established everywhere, there are no longer any ideological competitors for these systems. So he thinks, okay, the world will eventually all becomes democracy and market economy. This would mean that any fundamental contradiction in human life can be worked out within the context of the modern liberalization idea, meaning using election as a way of determining the government, and then using free market as a way of we exchange goods and ideas. Now that the end of history is rich, Fukuyama believes that the international relationships would be primarily concerned with economic matters and no longer with politics or strategy, thus reducing the chances of a large-scale international violent conflict. Interestingly, since the Second World War, we don't have any large-scale international violent conflict. The main factor, I think, is because our ability to use nuclear weapons to ensure a mutual destruction, the so-called MAD, mutually assured destruction. And that has stopped major powers from entering into major conflict. But we must realize that actually the world is not peaceful. We have seen various conflicts in different parts of the world almost continuously. For example, in Middle East, American just withdraw from Afghanistan, and we have the invasion of Iraq, Libya, Syria at the moment is also very volatile, and therefore we have seen some still continuous conflict, but there's no major conflict because many countries now have nuclear weapons, and that will stop them from entering into major conflict. Now, whether our political system will remain as the so-called democratic way of selecting a government, but we are now seeing a new political system coming up, namely from China. China looks like is not a democracy as we understood it in the West, but it seems that they are doing very well. So there are some contradiction here. So assuming that we have already arrived at the end of history, I think is a bit naive. So let's continue with this one. Now, Fukuyama concludes that the end of history will be a sad time because the potential ideological struggles that people were prepared to risk their lives has now been replaced with the prospect of economic calculation, the endless solving of technical problems, and environmental concerns and satisfaction of sophisticated consumer demands. This does not mean that Fukuyama believes that a modern liberal democracy is the perfect political system, but rather that he does not think another political structure can provide citizens with levels of wealth and personal liberties that a liberal democracy can. Now, whether that's true or not, we don't know. And obviously, we have learned from Plato's, democracy isn't the most ideal system. And so drawing conclusion that we have now reached our end of history, there will be no more change in the way we human organize ourselves, I think is very naive. But somehow his naivety prompted him to be a professor in political science. This is quite ironic. So I would like to spend the rest of this the hour on how the Chinese thought is. So we will move on to some of the Chinese political ideas. Chinese culture is quite different from the Western culture in the sense that religion hasn't played a large part in the Chinese government. The religious element in the Chinese life has remained largely unsupported by organization and religious institutions. Although a religion's private and peripheral character has altered by China's mass acceptance of Buddhism, even Buddhism adopted itself through thoroughly to the China's secular values, and Neo-Confucianism strongly asserted the primacy of traditional social values. So we would like to look at the idea from Confucian, looking at what do we mean by a Chinese idea of political system, hopefully to explain why the Chinese nowadays accepted the current Chinese government, namely the Communist Party of China, why they accepted CPC as a legitimate government. Government legitimacy is a very important issue in the West. We said that a government is legitimate because we voted the government in. And then if there's for example, a coup changing the government without our participation, that means not through an election, we'll consider the government illegitimate. So the legitimacy of the government depends on citizens' participation, namely election. But the Chinese doesn't view it that way. The Chinese view the legitimacy of the government is whether the government is doing good for the citizen. Of course, this is very difficult to define. How can we define a good government? What do we mean by a good government? And that has been one of the issues I've been struggling with. I don't know what is a good government and what's a bad government. So here, let me throw in what the Chinese think is a good government, and then we can discuss it from there. The Chinese thought developed predominantly during the Warring States period, which is 481 to 221 before Christ, before the Common Era. So It is also about the time of Buddha, also about the time when Plato, etc., started their political thoughts. So it seems that throughout the world in around 500 BC, there's a lot of idea about how governments or how we can govern ourselves. China did not experience the Christendom struggle between the church and the state, nor enforced religious pluralism, which succeeded the European wars of religion. Federalism, which in Europe provided the basis for constitutionalism, disappeared from China with the war chariot. Indeed, it was the collapse of the federalism which created the problems with which China's ancient thinkers were preoccupied. Finally, the emphasis on finding a new means of maintaining social harmony led Chinese philosophers to think less in terms of an abstract principles and more in terms of process of socialization. As a result, China produced a political culture rather than a political philosophy. Well, that is a very interesting comment. So let's look at it. The main contributing ideas in Chinese culture consist of 3 parts. The first part is Confucianism, okay, what Confucius has said. The other part is Taoism, what Laozi has said. Okay. And the third part is Buddhism, what the Buddha has said. So these 3 philosophies intermingle each other and make up of the modern Chinese way of thinking. So in order to understand this, let's look at each one by itself. And then bear in mind that these ideas were developed about 500 BC and then have been evolving in the past 2,500 years. So this long process of evolution, of course, will deviate from the initial thoughts quite a bit. And it is also interesting how a 2,500 years old philosophy or thinking still is relevant today. And that is a very remarkable thing. Now we would assume that any thoughts after that long time might have lost its relevancy in today's world. But interestingly, all the 3 ideas mingled together is still the primary mode of thinking in the Chinese mind. So let's look at Confucianism. Confucius is 551 BC to 479 BC. And he is a teacher mainly. So his philosophical teachings called Confucianism emphasize personal and government morality, correctness of social relationships, justice, kindness, and sincerity. He is part of our social life and has been evolving ever since. So let's look at one of the most important idea. Although Confucius does not mention the concept of democracy, which is itself a Western or Greek concept, which is unknown in ancient China, it could be interpreted by the Confucius principle, the ideal world of Daitong. Okay, Daitong. This is the original text, not very long, just 4 lines. And I have a translation here. The translation is something like this. In the era of when the Great Tao was implemented, the world was in a fair and everyone elects moral and capable people as their leaders. They emphasized credibility and got along with each other in harmony. Therefore, people not only regard their relatives as relatives, also not only their sons and daughters as children, so that the elderly can spend their twilight years in peace. The ability of all mature people can be exerted. The young people can grow up healthy. For people who are widows, loneliness, disability, and sick can be taken care of by the society. All men have professions, and women all marry at the right time to the right person. For poverty, people just don't want it to be thrown on the ground in vain, and it doesn't necessarily have to be hidden in their own homes. For work, people are afraid that the things are not done by themselves, but not only gain for themselves. Therefore, there's no market for intricate methods, and the phenomena of openly robbing and secretly inquiring people has disappeared. Therefore, the door not only needs to be brought on from the outside and does not need to be locked. This is called Dai Tong. Here, he described a very communist idea of the society. Now, the good people, the moral and people with ability are elected as leaders, okay? It doesn't prescribe how to elect these leaders. It just say that we need to elect leaders who are moral and capable, okay? How to do that, we don't know. And then the other thing is the society will be, as described, will be very, have a very strong safety net, okay? The old will not be lonely, and the young will be taken care of. All the middle-aged, the people who can work, will be working, not for themselves, but for the good of the society. And if there's anything left on the road, you don't need to be worried because nobody is going to steal it. Just somebody will hate that something is there to be wasted. And everybody is looking after each other. So it is a very ideal world described by these Chinese utopia. This is called Dai Tong, which is the ultimate ideas. This idea has been brought forward at the end of the Qing dynasty in 1911. The emperor system dynasties ended officially in 1911, 10th of October, when the the Republic of China is formed. The ROC, Republic of China, was formed in 1911, 10th of October. And then China entered into a civil war between the then Kuomintang and the Communist Party. And then later on, China was invaded by the Japanese. And then we have the Second World War. And by 1945, something around that, Second World ended. China again entered into a civil war, again between the Kuomintang, KMT, and the Communist Party. Then by 1st October 1949, the People's Republic of China is formed. So that is the recent history. And then after the formation of the People's Republic of China, the Communist Party entered into a land reform, and all the previous landowners were purged. So a lot of them got killed, etc. So this was very brutal. Okay, so at that time, they built up a lot of hate from the people against the Communist Party. And that goes on. And then we have the Great Leap Forward. And then we have the Great Cooperation. And then the Cultural Revolution. This all ended in 1976 when Chairman Mao died. Then Deng Xiaoping come along. Deng Xiaoping say that being rich is not against socialism. Okay, you want to reform China, we need to bring China out from the agricultural society, which was China at that time, into industrialized society. He said that, okay, you're gonna do that. We need capital, we need money. So let's open up, do a reform and allow some people to get rich first. The implication of that one is after that, then these rich people will need to help the poor people to also get rich. That's the implication. And then we see what happened in China. From the opening up until today, China now is the second largest economy. Now, what Chinese government now say is common prosperity. Chinese government now is in the second phase of that sentence. The first part of the sentence is let someone get rich first, okay? That's what is done now. So the second part of the sentence is let the rich help the poor to get rich. So this is what Xi Jinping is now embarking to do. And hopefully they want to finish it by the second 100 years anniversaries. Okay, there were two 100 years anniversaries, which the Communist Party of China recognized. The first one is the formation of the party. The formation of the party is in 1921. And this year is the 100th anniversary of the CPC, the Chinese Communist Party of China. The second anniversary, the second 100th anniversary will be in 2049. Now, remember, the People's Republic of China is formed in 1949. So the 100 years anniversary will be 2049. And at that time, the Communist Party of China want China to become a strong country, no longer fear of all the humility which China has experienced in its past 200 to 300 years. Okay, so this is history. Now let's put that together and look at what is said here by Confucius 2,500 years ago. The idea of the Confucian is that we have a society where it doesn't prescribe how to elect, but we'll have to elect a moral and capable leaders. Okay, that's number one thing. The number two thing is people will looking after each other. Young will be looked after, the old will be looked after, the women will be married to the right man at the right time, the men will have work to do, etc., etc. Okay, it is a very ideal society. Okay, and then he also talked about the wealth. Okay, people doesn't care about the wealth anymore. They hate the valuable thing to be left there and being wasted. These things not necessarily have to be themselves owned by them. And they talk about we have doors, but the door need not be locked. The door there is for privacy, but not being locked. That means you don't afraid of some people coming in and stealing your thing. So that is a very socialist, I would say, even communist idea of a society. So I would like to call back here and then ask, what should we think? What should our government be? what is the primary responsibility of the government if we need that? So there are two questions here. The first question, do we need a government? And second question is, if the answer is yes, then what is the purpose of the government? What is the purpose of the government? Now, let me give you examples of no government and weak government. When there's no government, like our aborigines here, when they met with foreign invaders, there is no way for them to defend themselves. Get genocide. Okay. Same for the original people in America. Okay. A lot of areas like that, because their government is not strong enough. China experienced the humility in the last 300 years because the government is not strong enough to protect the people. So I would say we need government. The second question, if we need government, then what is the purpose of a government? But the purpose of government, of course, is for the people, okay? And one of the things that we have to talk about is government here is to do something which individual cannot take care of them by themselves. In a society today, we are all dependent on each other. We can't. You suddenly all the people die, just left with, let's say, 4 us. Can we survive? I don't think so. That means we don't even have electricity. We don't even have running water. Okay, we need to move to somewhere there's water. We need to find food. There's no supermarket. We need to grow the food ourselves. Now today we can't do all that. We are now part of a complex system. Okay, but to maintain this complex system, we will have to ask, what do we want from this complex system? And how to organize this complex system? Today, one of the organizing methods is money. We use money to organize almost everything. You want something, go to the supermarket, pay the money, and they get the thing you want. Money is the media in which we organize ourselves. For example, when we are working, we get a salary, which is a money, and then we use that to get whatever we want. And we are not doing a exchange of things. I'm a teacher, so I will go to the children in my street and say, okay, you come here, and then I will teach you something, and then your parents give me something to eat so that I can teach you. No, we don't do that anymore. We use money as a method of organizing everything. Also, there's one thing we need to organize is, what do we mean by money? Money is only a symbolic thing, a piece of paper, a symbolic thing. It has no value by itself, but we assign value to money. And today we don't even have money. We can use credit card. We don't even have money, okay? It is just a number in the bank. Not even money, just a number in the bank. But we trust that this number, when used in this way, can organize our lives. But we also need something else. The roads, the infrastructure, electricity, water, everything. So infrastructure. And on top of infrastructure, we say, okay, for a society, we want us to be prosperous. Okay, we need to be competitive among other areas, among other people. So we need to educate our kids. Okay, free education. What do you mean free education? It's not free. The teachers have salaries, right? The schools need property. These are not free, but we send our children to school. We don't pay extra. So somebody pay for it. Well, it's the complex system that we, our society, pay for it. So our medicine, okay? We get sick. Some people are unlucky. So they go to see a doctor. We have a Medicare card. And then some doctors charge a little bit more, but the bulk of this is bulk pay, okay? So we don't have to pay. This again is offered by government. So government now evolves into a much more complex organism which lives within our society. So fundamentally, we are asking is still, what is this organism? What should it look like, and how it organize ourselves? How it operates? What kind of function it provides to us? We started this hour by the talk of end of history, thinking, hey, we now have a idea what a government is. This government is formed by election, okay? We elect some representative, and this representative sit together, come up with some ideas, and then get this idea executed so that us will benefit. Are we benefiting from the decisions made by our politicians? How do we know? How do we know that they are doing something for us? We don't know, okay? So the Chinese philosophy here describe the ideal, but this doesn't describe the way to achieve the ideal. But the West, for example, when we talk about Plato, they concentrate on the process of getting something. So there's a big contrast here in terms of the philosophy. The Chinese describe the end point, okay? Ideal society, but doesn't prescribe how to get there. The West talk about aristocracy, and then democracy, and then democracy and tyranny. They are all processes. So if the process is executed exactly, is that still make the government legitimate? For example, yes, we have a government. We form by election. This is the process. We go through the process. The process goes very well. We form a government. Is that government legitimate? Today we say yes, because it goes through all the process. But to the Chinese, they will say, no, hang on. Let's look at what the government do, and can they give us this ideal outcome? If they cannot give us this ideal outcome, we don't consider this government legitimate. There's a big difference here, right? One difference, procedural justice. You execute through these procedures, then the end result is legitimate, and the end result government is a good government. But the Chinese way thinking is no. I don't care how you get this government. I look at what the government do to us. Is that delivering the kind of thing we want? So the next question is, what do we want from a government? Now I will give you 4 things for you to consider. The first thing, I think I don't need to share screen. I think it's better to just discuss. I will suggest 4 things for you to consider. Okay. The first thing, provide an environment where we can do what we like. Let us develop. Provide an environment so that we can live. Okay. Second thing, provide a safety net so that the unfortunate members of our society are being looked after with dignity. We all have compassion, right? We want to see the disabled, the lonely people, etc., being looked after. And there's also benefit for us as well, because these people will not become a problem. For example, when they are hungry, they are stealing our thing for food, etc. We look after them. They are dignified and they respect themselves, so they won't do the bad things to the common people. But at the same time, we also have compassion. We give these people a dignity life. We recognize they are the unfortunate member of our society, but they are still our members. So we look after them. So the second function. The third function is to, when natural disaster strikes, the government help us to minimize the harm. For example, there's a cyclone coming, or there's a weather change causing some damages, or there's a fire. Okay, the government will organize to minimize the damage. There's a fire, the fire brigade will come and help us extinguish the fire, etc. And the fourth thing is prevent human disasters. In the society, there are people who are evil. Unfortunately, there's always some. In a large enough society, there will be very good people and there will be some very bad people. But we want to make sure that these bad people do not damage or harm the rest of the people. So we need policing, police, our security. But the security also extends to, we don't want another strike over the sea, the other side, come with an army and then subjugate us to their demands. We want to be able to protect ourselves. So I would say, I want our government to have these four functions. Provide us with an environment where we can do whatever we like. The second thing is look after the unfortunate. The third thing is protect us from the damage of natural disasters. We know that there are natural disasters coming, but we don't want to be left alone. The government will help us to minimize the damage. And then finally, protect ourselves so that nobody can hurt us. I will say these are the four fundamental requirements of our government. How to achieve that? Let the moral and the capable men do it. I don't care how they are elected. If they can give me that four things, I will be happy. What do you think? No?
Well, I'm thinking of how this applies to Australia and other Western so-called democracies. We have party systems. We have a sort of conservative grouping that we think are the best at creating wealth. Then we have another group of people who know how to distribute it, and they take it in turns to rule. And then our economic system, you said that China has this 100-year plan and another 100-year plan, one to have to create wealthy people, and then the next 100 years to bring everybody else up to being wealthy. We have a more of a system which is described as a trickle-down system, where we have people creating their own wealth. But then they want to keep it, and they don't want to pay taxes, and it's going to take a long while for this to trickle down so that everybody is wealthy. I just wonder how does China think that when they get to the end of their first 100-year period that the wealthy will want to retain their wealth, and then it won't be available to the others? Or how does it work in 100 years' time?
Now, wealth is created. We know that in our society, any society, there will be inequality. Let me start with this thing, okay? We are not born equal. We are born unequal, okay? For example, some people are more intelligent, some are less. Some people are born handicapped, some are not. Some are born very able. And some are born into rich families, some are poor. And some are born into the peaceful time, and some born in the warring time where they might not even survive. So the first thing I would like to say is we are born unequal. Although we are born unequal, we want to be able to fulfill our lives. Again, every people might have a different idea of what is a best life for themselves. Some people are ambitious, they want to be very rich. But some people, like myself, wealth is not important. No money is important, but sufficient money for me to get by is sufficient. I don't need $1 million car. To me, that doesn't make sense. Okay, I just need a car which I can use. Okay, and I can afford it. I'm happy. Okay, but some people don't. They say, okay, I want 100 cars to be used in 100 different occasions. To me, a car is a car. I don't care. If a bus can get me there, why not? So now, different people have different ambitions. Okay, we have to recognize that, and then different people also have different circumstances. For example, you are born rich, so you will educated well, etc., etc. Okay, life will be easy for you. But unfortunately, some people will be born poor, so they may have to start working very young in life, and then never get there. So a society is like that. But we have to remember, the rich people getting rich in a society is dependent on the conditions provided by the society. There is a lot of luck in between, okay? If, for example, I just met a very wealthy girl and she loves me, and then I can marry and then I suddenly become very rich, maybe that's luck, okay? There's luck in everywhere. So in a society where we consider compassion, then we can argue to the rich, say, it is the society which provided you with the conditions for you to get rich. And when the whole society is prosperous, okay, everybody is able to do whatever they like. They can buy whatever they like. Then business will be better because we have a larger middle class. So in order to do that, it makes sense for you to contribute back to the society so that more people get rich, so that your product can sell better. And then one of the functions government has is the wealth redistribution. We have the primary wealth distribution, which we call work. We work, okay? We receive a compensation. That is the primary form where we we get by, okay, our lives. So that's primary distribution. And then the society, the government will say, for those people earning more, pay more tax. And when the government got this money, they use the money to build our society, compensating for those who are unfortunate. They won't be able to afford it. And therefore, it is a redistribution of money. Tax system is a redistribution of money. And we usually agree that the wealthy or the high earners pay more tax because it is part of the secondary redistribution of wealth. And that is a third type of wealth redistribution, which is called, what's that called? We have different organizations doing voluntary work. For example, UVA. It's a third type of wealth redistribution, okay? We contribute something and then we get something back. And then for the rich people, you can have a charity fund, okay? You put money there to do something which you think is important. Charity is the third type of redistribution. What if we...
But it's pretty thin on the ground, though. It doesn't seem to happen very well. The wealthier people sort of monopolize the whole system.
Yeah.
And they vote for the people who look after them.
Yeah.
And they're less inclined to help the poorer people. And I think we're in a bit of that situation ourselves here.
So if they don't want to do it voluntarily, we can force them to do it.
I think it's impossible to force them.
Whether it's possible or not, it depends on the society. Yeah. Yeah. When the whole society considered that the well people should contribute back, otherwise you will have a revolt. Now look at the history. Why there are revolutions? The French Revolution, for example, or any revolution, is the very wealthy ones whose life is so extravagant that the poor people, the envy started to build up and thinking it is unfair. When your sense of unfairness increases to a certain point, then you will rebel.
Well, we're waiting for the revolution in Australia, I can tell you.
We are not there yet. We are far from there.
The poorer ones have to swamp the richer ones to have a revolution.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, we're not going to have a revolution in Oz, are we? Because there's not enough poor people to.
Not enough poor people to get a revolution. Yes. Yeah. And for most of us, we can get by. We are not that angry.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
We are not that angry. Okay. And yes. And then that's where the rich can get away. And that is where the trickle-down economy seems to work. But if the government make that idea clear to the citizens and say, yes, we now have some people very rich, and it is only fair for these very rich people to contribute back to make every one of us better off.
Yeah, but it's a matter of the wealthy governments then are back off on that because they say it's better if the wealthy people use their money in an appropriate way, but they won't. They use it selfishly. But
yeah, and therefore it is. Now, I totally agree with our current system here. With election, with different parties, we are bombarded with different ideas, and then we are divided along these ideological lines. Okay, for example, the liberals say, okay, we will have the trickle-down economy. We let the rich get rich, and they eventually will better off. That's one line of thinking. The other line of thinking is, no, we want to have a more socialist world. We have a more welfare, looking after the poor and the unfortunate and so forth. So we have two ideologies arguing against each other. And then, unfortunately, they're asking everybody to vote.
Mm.
I would argue this is the dumbest way to make a decision.
If
you want to make a good decision, you need the people making the decision knowledgeable about the domain of the question, the problem.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
If you don't even understand what is this and that, how can you have to make a decision? When you say one people, one vote, similar to say I have an illness. I go out to the road and ask anybody walking by, what medicine should I take? What medicine I take? No, we don't do that.
Yes.
We ask our daughter who has been trained to tell us what to do. But today, the most important decision of a country, who get to rule us, is decided by similar asking everybody, hey, which one's better to rule? Come on, not everybody knows what is a good government, what's not. This is one of the dumbest ways to select a government. But now I understand we won't be able to change it. I'm not suggesting that Australia should change. I'm just saying that there is another way of looking at history. Okay, China seems to have a different way.
Yeah,
it's working for them.
Albert, you said in China the government's responsibility is in 4 areas. What would...
No, that's my idea of 4 areas.
Okay. Well, what would happen if many people in China thought that the government wasn't fulfilling their obligations to the people? What kind of safeguards are in the system?
Actually, no safeguard. We are all like that. We are just like our society here. There's no safeguard. We thought, okay, we have a safeguard. After years, we vote them out. But you know what? So what? When one government out, the next government back in, do they do what we want to do? No safeguard. So there's no safeguard there. But there's one thing called in China called mandate heaven. That's from the dynasties. Okay, when the emperor is a just emperor, he got the mandate heaven and he got to rule.
Yes.
But when your mandate heaven is withdrawn, your head is also withdrawn, chop off. That's a pretty large motivation. Okay, now the problem with China has been the emperors, the next emperors, and the next are all connected by blood. You live your position to your son. Okay, so that you are connected. Okay, and because of that, you have a limited choice. You have only that number of sons. Okay, but now the Chinese system is now Xi Jinping is the emperor at the moment. Okay, who is the next emperor? Not connected to him by blood. Is connected by the Chinese Communist Party of China. These parties had almost 10 million members. Among these 10 million members, throughout their lives, working from the village secretary and then promoting every 5 years, if they are good enough, to the next level. Another 5 years to the next level, and the 5 years to the next level, and then gradually moving up from the village to the county to the province. By the time they are to the province, Chinese province is very large. Sometimes even Shanghai is larger than Australia. Number of people. Okay, Shanghai has more than 30 million people. We have only 20-something million, so Shanghai is larger than Australia. By the time they are charged to manage large provinces or specialty direct cities like Shanghai, Beijing, etc. They accumulate a lot of experience, and then they promoted to the top 300 people in the political elite in the very top. And then the next emperor will be elected from these 300 people. So until this system get back to that by blood relationship, as long as the next emperor of China is not elect, is not limited by a connection of blood by the last emperor, we still have a mechanism of selecting someone who is very good, because this someone has to work from very bottom, 5 years, next level, 5 years, next level, 5 years. You need at least 4 levels. So you need at least 20 years before you can reach the top. And then every level, huge competition, 10 million CCP members. It's huge competitions. So you can compete against 10 million people and eventually becomes the last 300 people there. These 300 people are all very good.
But what happens when the top leader declares that he's got the job for life?
No, he can't.
Well,
he can't. At the moment, the 300 people decided that Xi Jinping can have more than 2 terms.
Oh, right.
But it doesn't mean Xi Jinping will have it forever. No.
Ah, but that's the sort of the story that
being told that Xi Jinping have it for life. No, they allow Xi Jinping to have more than 2 terms because his work haven't been done yet, haven't finished.
So that's 10 years. He's got 10 years, is it?
He got 10 years and he can extend for another 5 and then another 5, depending on the progress. He is not an easy job. He get up at 6 in the morning and work until about 10 in the evening, non-stop. It is not a life I want to do. And his itinerary is up to the minute. He has about 10 minutes for lunch, 10 minutes for dinner. This is not the life I want to be. Even when he have the so-called banquets, he is still thinking, working. Of course, there's a lot of people around him helping him. There is no doubt about that. Not every idea come from Xi Jinping. But his main idea, like the One Belt, One Road, haven't finished yet. Like the common prosperity, it's not finished yet. It's just started. But all the policy coming out is not his single idea. It's the 300 people plus all the people supporting that 300 people.
Very interesting.
So China is a total different system. So what I'm trying to say is, we can start thinking about what's the government for us. Our government in Australia, we won't have hunger because after all, we are a lucky country. We won't go hungry, okay? Even when China doesn't buy anything from us, we still okay. We have food. Doesn't have to worry about that. And I don't see there will be a chance of revolution in Australia. But I'm not that sure for America.
No.
I'm not that sure for America. It is very dangerous at the moment.
Yes.
And history is not end of history. History is still going on. We have another different system coming up from China. Chinese system, whether it's good or not, we don't know. We don't know. And there's no guarantee. Just like here, we don't have guarantee. Although we say, okay, if the government is bad, we get that off. But is that really a change? Look at America. No, it is not. There is no guarantee. Mm-hmm. The guarantee is blood. When the society is so unbearable, and that's blood. That's the guarantee.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for
Good.
today.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Albert.
Bye.